In the Washington State Legislature, there are two main types of committees, policy and fiscal. It is fiscal cutoff week and legislators are working late into the night.
I love policy committees because that's where we really deliberate and talk about the laws, the policy, the language, and the fiscal committee, which I love also, is actually how we pay for it. If we want to talk about having a day where students are going to learn about voting, so that'll go through a policy committee and we'll talk about what day that is and when we'll start. But it costs money to have the schools use their staff time or for schools to maybe create a website. So those are the two committees and how they sort of need each other in order to have a complete law.
Remember, bills are first passed out of policy committee, and if they cost more than $50,000, they go to a fiscal committee. Fiscal meaning money.
I'm a vice chair of the Appropriations Committee in the House. The interesting part about being in Appropriations is that you see all the bills from every single policy committee. There's lots of policy committees, and there's only one Appropriations Committee. So we see probably anywhere from 2 to 5 to 10 bills from each of those policy committees. So it can really add up.
In terms of fiscal committees, the House and the Senate differ on how they operate. There are 2 fiscal committees in the House and only 1 in the Senate. Technically, transportation also deals with money, but that's for another video.
What are we talking about? In the Senate, the Ways and Means Committee cover taxation and spending in one committee structure. Well, the ways basically are taxes. The means are basically spending. In the House, appropriations deals with spending, finance with taxation.
In the policy committee, legislators discuss what the state wants to do. In these fiscal committees, legislators discuss how much an idea will cost. These costs are broken down into what are called fiscal notes.
So fiscal notes kind of look at all the different agencies that are going to be implementing the legislation, the policy. So that's what a fiscal note does. It kind of tells us a little bit about how much it's going to cost so we can determine whether or not we can afford it.
When you're talking about new proposals, fiscal notes are speculative. They are best guesses of things. How many people will it take to run this program? How much will each of these positions cost? How many hours per year will it require to run this program? If we're using existing staff, what type of allocation of time will it require? And there is a fairly complex math system that the Office of Financial Management and the Fiscal Note Office uses into generating these estimates. And they have to do thousands of them in a 105-day session. So they are estimates, and they are the best estimates that are available. In cases where we're expanding existing programs, the math will be far more certain because they actually have real data to work with. But with new proposals, it will be speculative. It'll be best guesses.
Like policy committees, fiscal committees also have public hearings. So, how might your testimony differ from committee to committee?
The fact is, when you go to a fiscal committee, you have to say why this spending is important. Why the spending is important to keep or to get rid of. But what you need to do is tell the member in usually a minute, hi, my name is Mike Moran. I'm here to speak on House Bill 1234. Protecting three-toads loss is a surprisingly important issue in the Olympic Peninsula, and the $4 million that we're asking for will keep these animals, these precious sacred animals, in the Olympic forest with the vampires and everything else that goes on up there in Twilight Land, and you must help us. I mean, that's how you take the financial message and you tie it to the policy concern.
You're supposed to talk about the cost of the bill and why you want to pay for this bill with taxpayers' dollars and why it's important. But oftentimes it's really hard for people to understand actually what it is we're talking about and why we want to pay for it. And so a lot of testimony does sort of loop back into the policy in itself. Kind of going back, having a day in school where you're learning about voting. They'll typically talk about how important that is, but also that the cost that it takes and the people's time it takes is worth it.